Good morning, Garland Nixon here, and we got lots of good news. We got some good news. Tony Blinken's on the hot seat. That's always good news for me. And we're going to talk about the Ukraine offensive and other stuff. Let's talk. All right, Garland here, and it's May 2nd. I never really thought about it until yesterday. A lot of people brought it up that, my birthday's May 1st, May Day, and I guess maybe that has something to do with my ideological bend, but my concern with the working schmuck out here and all that kind of stuff. At any rate, let's get to the news. We're going to start with Tony Blinken, and he is in the hot seat in more ways than one. So let me start by filling you in with Blinken being on the hot seat. Apparently what happened was there was a letter regarding the Hunter Biden laptop. Just prior to the 2020 election, the Hunter Biden laptop, give you a quick, the 1-minute overview. A laptop surfaced, in particular the hard drive of a laptop from Hunter Biden that had lots of bad stuff on it, right? It had all of Hunter Biden's stuff, including pictures of him smoking crack with prostitutes, all kinds of questionable activities, shall we say, admissions of potential illegal activity, and also business-related things that pointed potentially to the president being involved in some of his business activities. And the fact of the matter is, apparently the president lied on more than one occasion and said, I don't know what's going on with Hunter Biden's stuff. And so at any rate, there was a lot of stuff on there. What we found out about that, and this is the big, I'll give you you need to understand the story on Hunter Biden's laptop before we go any further. A couple of things we find out. Number one, that the FBI had that laptop for a year when this happened. They had it for a year. So they knew everything in this laptop. They knew what was in it. I suppose they had the opportunity to go through it. Whether they did or not is in question. We don't know for sure. But they had the laptop. So they knew that it wasn't any kind of Russian or any other kind of interference from another country. They knew it was true. They knew where it came from. They had it. The FBI then went to the social media, and we're assuming they went to the mainstream media and said, we think the information about this laptop is Russian disinformation. But they had the laptop, and they knew it wasn't. So the FBI got the laptop, looked at it, realized it was good. At that point, went to social media, went to mainstream media, and intentionally, willfully, with malice and a forethought, lied to them and said, not only do we think this is Russian disinformation, but we also think that you should be prepared to censor it. Completely illegal, complete and absolute election interference. If that wasn't bad enough, old Tony Blinken at that time was an advisor to Joe Biden for his campaign. So we now have Mike Morrell, former CIA director. My understanding is, excuse me, on it, he wasn't CIA director at that time, but that's irrelevant. He's a former CIA assistant director, not director, and apparently he still had a lot of contacts, which isn't hard to believe because oftentimes when people leave these intelligence agencies, they maintain their clearance, often for life, usually. So Tony Blinken calls him, and according to Mike Morrell, as a result of the Tony Blinken conversation, he put together this infamous letter that said 51 former intelligence officials. Man, I'm just yawning too much. It's the mind. I'm thinking about yawning now, and now you guys screwed me up. Getting on my case about yawning, and now I can't stop thinking about yawning, and I'm screwed. So we'll just move forward and say yawning is an essential part. I'm going Zen here. Yawning is an essential part of this show. Without yawning, this show wouldn't be what it is. So let's add that to this is part of the thing that I do, the morning yawning show. Remind you that it's morning. All right, so we continue. So apparently Blinken, according to Mike Morrell, was the impetus for this letter that said 51 former intelligence agencies say that the Hunter Biden laptop story has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. So in reality, it was a U.S. disinformation program against the American people, deliberately to interfere with the 2020 election. And Tony Blinken was right in the middle of it. Now, Mike Morrell, which is something to think about. Mike Morrell, who's part of the machine, goes to Congress and testifies and rats out Tony Blinken and says, yeah, he made the call. And as a matter of fact, we did it. Now, there are those who would just say, well, Mike Morrell was under oath. Well, he's still a CIA guy. He could have still lied, whatever the case may be. But I also believe that if you look at the leaks right now coming out about Nord Stream, right, the infamous Seymour Hersh leaks, and the fact that if you look at that, it appears to have come from intelligence, and they appear to have fingered specifically Blinken, Sullivan, Newland, Biden, right, the inner neocon cabal. It leads me to believe that intelligence hates Blinken et al., et alia, as we would say properly, and his group and his crew, and they want to take him out. And this may be one of the reasons that Mike Morrell is saying, hey, Blinken was behind the whole thing. Let's face it, it was a Blinken move, right? All right. So we got all of that. That was important. Now let's move to Tony Blinken. Let's look at the latest. And Blinken's talking. And here's a guy who, here's the thing about Blinken. This is what I love about Blinken. If you're going to be evil, you might as well be stupid. That's what I like about Blinken. He's evil. The man is a sociopath. He is pure, unadulterated evil. He is a liar. He's in fact, one of the things apparently that was told to Seymour Hersh by inside intelligence officials, one of the things that they hate about Blinken and Sullivan and Newland and these people is their pathological lying, that they just make stuff up, right? So the reality is, this is the nature of neocons. The nature of a neocon is a lie. This is the nature of a sociopath, of a narcissist. That's what you're looking at, the unholy triad, as they call it, in a triad, as they call it. So let's look at what's happening with the old Blinkster, the old Blinkster. All right, this is great. I'm happy here to see the Blinkster finally maybe get his comeuppance, but we shall see. All right, so we got Blinken deflects blame for Russian disinfo letter on Hunter Biden's laptop. As you may know, having watched this thing for a while, Garland Nixon has a background in law enforcement. I was, in fact, a law enforcement official at one point. And throughout my career in law enforcement, at one point, I was the commander of the training division. At one point, I was a commander of the investigations division. And one of the things that I specialized in was investigations. And I took some courses on statement analysis. So let's look at what Tony Blinken said and let's analyze them. Let's do a forensic analysis of the words of Tony Blinken. This is going to be fun. So anyway, so we got an article. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has claimed that he was not behind a letter signed by 51 former intelligence officials, blah, blah, blah. Let's see what Blinken said. With regard to that letter, well, okay, let's start here. He's saying, I'm talking about the letter. We already know. I mean, hey, what do you think about the letter? With regard to that letter, let me tell you what that is. That is the equivalent of, and I'm going to go over this thing and do a forensic analysis of it. With regard to that letter is the equivalent of saying who me? Here's what I mean. If you're going to lie, right? Oftentimes there are patterns that indicate lying. A liar needs time. A liar needs to think. A liar needs to say things, right? So when you say, hey, did you lie about the letter? Who, me? Who, me? Whenever you hear who, me, and if there's nobody else in the room but you, hey, Joe, who, me? No, I'm talking to that guy over there. Of course you. I'm talking to Joe, but you're missing the mark. It's not a stupid person saying who, me. It's a crooked person saying who, me. It's a person who says, I gotta lie and I need time to think. When I say who, me, you're going to ask questions, you're going to freak out, you're going to whatever, and that's going to give me time to think. When I say with regard to that letter, I'm formulating something. My brain needs time. So tell me, did you lie about the letter? I could just say, no, absolutely. You tend to, when a person didn't do something, you tend to get a pretty straightforward answer. Hey, Garland, did you write that letter? No, get out of here with that. No, I didn't write the letter. Well, we're going to do an investigation. Well, you can investigate all you want. I didn't write the damn letter. Good. Go ahead and investigate. You'll find out I didn't write the letter. Move on. Get out of my face. Right? Okay. That seem believable? Garland, were you behind that letter? I had to hear with your stinking letters. No. Adios. Leave me alone. Doesn't that sound like a person? Hey, Garland, did you write that letter? With regards to the letter, the letter, we're talking about the letter, right? The letter. Oh yeah, the letter. Which letter, by the way? The letter I just handed to you. Oh yeah, that's right. With regard to the particular letter that you just handed to me on a white sheet of paper on today, May 2nd, 2023, at approximately 08:45. Yeah. No. I'm buying time because I'm lying. So, Tony Blinken, were you behind the letter? He starts off, with regards to the letter, he's looking for time to lie. Now watch what he says. He jumps from one thing to the next. With regards to the letter, oh yeah, I didn't, well, I couldn't, well, I might have, but I didn't. I don't think, well, possibly. What is happening? His mind is looking for something. He's looking for a lie. Should I try this? Oh, no, I better not try that. How about this? Ooh, that'll never work. Oh, man. Well, try that. Oh, crap. No. Oh, man. So what does he do? With regards to the letter, I didn't. It wasn't my idea. Didn't ask for it. Didn't solicit. Think about this. You know what it sounds like? A guy who's just trying things out, throwing things out, searching. Desperation is the word. So Tony Blinken says, when they ask him, were you behind the stinking letter? He says, with regard to that letter, I didn't. It wasn't my idea. Didn't ask for it. Didn't solicit it. He's searching. He's hoping. He's praying. He's looking for an out. He says, I didn't. And then he stops. Why would a person stop when they say I didn't if they didn't? Garland, did you write the letter? I didn't. I didn't write the damn letter. Leave me alone. But he says, I didn't. And then he stops. Ooh, crap. I can't say I didn't make the phone call. I can't say I didn't ask for the letter. I can't. So he says, I didn't. And then he stops because he doesn't want to get caught in a lie. And then he says, it wasn't my idea. That, my friend, is an admission of guilt. That, my friend, it wasn't my idea, says Tony Blinken. What does that mean? Hey, Garland, were you involved in the murder? It wasn't my idea. Hey, Garland, did you stab Joe Blow? It wasn't my idea. I didn't say I didn't stab him, did I? In fact, I kind of admitted that I was involved in stabbing poor old Joe, but I don't take the blame. It didn't originate with me. So he starts off, with regard to the letter, I didn't. Stop. Oh, better not go any further because, in fact, I did. Then he goes on to say, it wasn't my idea. I think we know he was involved in it. And now he's saying the bot that didn't originate with me. In other words, here's the other thing a sociopath always prepares to do, throw the next man under the bus. So he's like, it wasn't my idea. Well, the obvious question is going to be, whose idea was it, Tony? And at some point, when Tony's back is up against the wall, he will tell us whose idea it is. If he thinks he's going down, he's going to rat out that poor slob. Hey, I didn't. I mean, it wasn't my idea. Whose idea was it? It was Jake Sullivan. Please don't send me to jail. I swear to God, it was Jake. So he'll rat Jake Sullivan or whoever the hell out. Okay. Didn't ask for it. Didn't solicit it. He didn't ask for it. So it wasn't my idea, which means I was involved. I didn't ask for the letter. Do you notice how specific he's getting? He's getting, let me get back here. Let me go back. So what Tony Blinken's doing here is he's getting too specific. Were you involved in the letter? No. But now he's getting specific. Well, I didn't hand the pen to the guy that wrote the letter. I wasn't in the room when it was written. Technically speaking, I didn't call them and say, will you please write the letter in those exact words? Okay. I wasn't wearing a red shirt on the day that the letter was written. Let me think of some other things. I hadn't gotten a haircut on the day that get out of here. Were you behind the stinking letter or not? So Tony Blinken is now giving us details that are unrelated to whether or not he wrote the damn letter. I didn't. And he says, I didn't solicit it. What does that mean? I didn't solicit the letter. Again, what does that even mean? So then he goes on to say, this is Tony Blinken. Let us continue with Tony Blinken's lies from the pits of hell, lies from Tony Blinken. He says, and I think the testimony that the former deputy director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, put forward confirms that, Blinken told the news world. So he says, I didn't. It wasn't my idea. Didn't ask for it. Didn't solicit it. Right. And he says, and Mike Morell's testimony confirms it. Well, Mike Morell's testimony didn't confirm the origination of it. He didn't say whose idea it was, so it doesn't confirm that. He didn't say you asked for it or didn't ask for it, so it doesn't confirm or not confirm there. He never used the word soliciting or not soliciting. So the bottom line is this: he puts forward a bunch of hopes and prayers and a smokescreen, and then says Mike Morell's testimony confirms what there's nothing to confirm. You just put up a stinking smokescreen. So now he goes on to say, and you're going to love this. When asked whether he accepts that the laptop is not Russian disinformation, the top U.S. diplomat deflected the question, arguing that he is very busy with other matters. You love that? Don't you love that? He's busy with other things. Let's do an analysis. All right. Hey, is that laptop disinformation? What do we know? We know that we now have enough information to know that it's not. He knows that the FBI had it for a year before all that happened. We know that the same people who wrote that stinking letter have come out, some of them, and said, well, we kind of didn't know it was Russian. We knew it wasn't at the time. We also know that even in that letter, they said in the letter, there's no evidence that it's Russian disinformation. Right. So we know that there's never been any evidence that it was. We know that the FBI has had it all along. We know that that Hunter Biden has never one time denied and said, it's not mine. He's never denied that. He said, well, it's possible. Oh, yeah, somebody put all those pictures in your emails on there. It doesn't even make sense. So it is absurd to argue that it's Russian disinformation at this point. But when asked, but here's the problem. Tony Blinken's in a bind, because if he says it's not, and I know it's not, then it puts him in a bind because of the things he said and done. So it's a lie that he has no choice but to stick with. So let's see what he says. From my perspective, I'm not engaging in politics. They didn't ask you to engage in politics. They ask you, do you accept that it's Russian disinformation or not? Based on the evidence. Hey, Garland, you see that object over there? Yeah, it has leaves, it has a trunk, it has roots, and it has bark. Do you accept that it's a tree? Sure, it's obvious it's a damn tree. Well, Garland, do you accept that it's a tree? I'm not engaging in politics right now. In other words, he's ducking. See, that's why I say they have a saying in Iran, thank God for making my enemies fools. Tony Blinken. From my perspective, I'm not engaging in politics. Here's what I love. Hey, Tony Blinken. It looks like you're up to your ears in crap. So now you pretty much understand that it wasn't Russian disinformation. I got a lot on my agenda, things that we just talked about, trying to help the Ukrainians and the Russian aggression against them, engaging with allies and partners around the world, and dealing with some of the challenges posed by China. We have a situation now in Sudan. This is fully occupied my time. So that's where my focus is. No time to worry about silly laptops. Get out of here, guys. Is it something that I could go to jail for? Certainly. Did I lie, cheat, and steal? Yeah, am I involved in election disinformation? Could I possibly be involved in election interference? Could I be facing felony criminals? Yeah, sure. But right now, I don't have time for such trippery, such frippery, such, unimportant things. Don't you love that? Hey, Garland, there was a murder yesterday. Yeah. And a knife was found at the scene with your fingerprints on it, and your DEA was found at the scene. So, hey, Garland, what do you know about the murder? Murder? Yeah, guys, I got to cut the grass, my lawnmower, I got to clean that up, right now. Got to put some armor all on my tires. They're all dull and ashy looking. It's like when your arms are ashy and you got to put a lotion on them. Yeah, murder, DNA, knives. Who's got time? I think I hear my daughter calling me. She's got to go to cheerleading practice. Bye-bye. Come on, Tony Blinken. You are implicated in a crime, in criminal activity. And your answer is, hey, I got a lot of stuff on my agenda right now. No time to talk about the potential felonies that I could be charged with. I got to work on this other important stuff. Bye. See you later, guys. You got to love Tony Blinken. You got to love Tony Blinken. You got to love Tony Blinken. All right. So if that ain't enough, What are we doing next? The offensive. Well, guess what? There's a couple of things we need to know about that. The Russians, I'm afraid, they're not even going to be able to make it, because what we know now is, look at this. 100 million trillion Russians are killed. Now, here's what kills me. Let me see if I can find this. 100,000. Let's start here. I think we need to look at what's happened in the past first, and then we'll move forward. Watch this. Watch this. Almost 180,000 Russians dead or wounded in Ukraine, Norwegian general says. That's right, my gosh. 180,000 wiped out. Russians' history done. The numbers are unthinkable. How can the Russians possibly make it when they've lost 180,000? And now let's look at the newest numbers. Let's look at the recent numbers, okay? And now there's less. 20,000 Russians killed and 80,000. So we've gone from 180,000 dead and wounded Russians to 100,000. Isn't that interesting? The Russians, man, I'm telling you something right now. This is a strange war. When 1 month you got 180,000 dead or wounded, and the next month you got 100,000 dead or wounded. So bottom line is this. I don't see how the Russians are going to make it. Because, well, I don't know, though, if you think about it, things are going well for the Russians. I mean, they have actually less dead and wounded than they did in the past. That means that literally Russians, you know what it reminds me of? A lot of people in other countries may not remember this or ever heard of this, but there was a comedy called Get Smart in the United States, and it was a Mel Brooks comedy, and it was actually hilarious. My favorite TV show of all times. And in one of the shows, there was two. The bottom line is, it was like the CIA versus the KGB, and the CIA was called Control, and the KGB was called Chaos, right? And actually the KGB, it was more like the Nazi intelligence, right? But the bottom line was, in this farcical comedy, one of the episodes, the Chaos, the evil side, found a way to bring their dead agents back to life, right? Well, apparently that's what the Russians have done. The Russians, I mean, think about it. If the Russians had 180,000 wounded last month and they're down to 100,000 this month, then all they got to do is keep fighting. And at some point, they won't have lost anybody. I mean, they're going in the right direction. If I'm the Russians, I'm like, this war has to keep going, because I'm getting more people alive than I did before. So either we're being snookered by the mainstream media, or the Russians have found some mysterious way to literally bring their troops back to life and unwound them. And I don't know how you unwound somebody, but that's what's happening with the Russians. Now let's look on for the offensive. Here we go. All righty. Here's what we got. Ukraine could launch its offensive against Russia any moment. Could already happen by the time I said this. Here's what's waiting, right? Ukraine says its preparation for a spring offensive are almost complete when it's launched, probably in the south. Well, that ought to help. Hey, great idea there. Hey, I'm going to punch you where? In the jaw. Great. I'll just block that and knock your brains out. Any ideas? Well, I'm going to try to knee in the groin after that. Thanks. I will be happy to block that. Anything else? Well, I'm going to go get a weapon and hit you with it. Great. I have to break your stinking neck before you get a chance to leave and go get your weapon. There you go. Telegraph what you're going to do. That's always a great idea in war. Ukraine says it will mark a pivotal moment in the conflict, but the Russians had nearly 6 months to prepare the ground and build an elaborate array of defense. Breaking through will present a huge challenge. No. Challenge ain't the word. Challenge is what it will prevent that if you're Tim Lister and you're writing an article for CNN. If you're a Ukrainian soldier and you're running towards machine gun-esque pillboxes, kill zones, it's going to be something much, much worse. It's going to mean the end of your existence. Satellite. Now, here's what I love. Satellite imagery reviewed by CNN and other news organizations showed the extent of Russian defenses that have been built up in parts of southern Ukraine, layers of anti-tank ditches, obstacles, minefields, and trenches. The defenses continue for hundreds of miles across the meandering southern front where Ukrainian forces are expected to concentrate their counteroffensive. The challenge for the Ukrainians will be to bypass or overcome such obstacles at speed. No, that ain't the challenge. The challenge for them will be saying their prayers, because if you're going right into heavily built offenses, you're going to die. You're going to get wiped out. It's game over for you. Now, listen to this. Here's what I love about the U.S. media. Several satellite images shared with CNN by Maxar Technologies. Good old Maxar Technologies. Well, who could they possibly be? Certainly, Maxar Technologies would be an independent company who is just looking out for the Maxar Technologies, solutions for U.S. intelligence, advancing national security and global awareness. Trusted, rapid, and precise geospatial spatial intelligence. There you go. They got stuff in there we go. All that big data and now insight from space, Earth intelligence, blah, 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 for U.S. intelligence. And we go back to CNN, who is, so the bottom line is this. It is a fraud. It is a front. When CNN says several satellite images shared with CNN by Maxar Technologies, all they're saying is we got it from the CIA. See, that's the whole game. You create a company that's supposedly outside of the CIA. It's funded by the CIA. And then you say, yeah, we got it from a private corporation. Show extensive trenches east of the town of Paholy in the Zaporozhye region. A Reuters analysis of imagery found thousands of defensive positions over a vast area. Go on. Trenches. They say Russian defenses included, for example, anti-tank ditches stretching for 30 kilometers, as well as extra fortifications. This area will be critical should Ukraine forces try to advance towards the city of Melitopol and split Russian forces in the south. Maxar's Stephen Wood says these defenses are replicated across blah, blah, blah. Here's the bottom. These defenses began, okay, so months of preparation. So think about this. Ukrainian officials had announced that unlike September's sweep through much of Kharkov region, they may lack even the element of surprise. Oh, they lack the element of surprise. Isn't that brilliant? So you say, you've been saying for months, hey, Ukraine offensive is coming in the spring. When is it? Any day now, probably within the next couple of days. And anything else, yeah, for some reason, the Russians won't be surprised at all. I can't imagine how they could possibly see this coming. Yeah, we've been doing articles every day saying it's coming in the spring. We're a couple weeks off. Hold off, Russians. We were going to go it Tuesday, but we got a couple of issues. Can you hold off till next week? Maybe Monday, maybe 4:35 p.m. in the evening. That's what we're thinking. I don't know. We want the guys to get a good night's sleep. So how about we put it in your calendar, Russians? I mean, they literally went to Google Calendar and sent it to, Sergei Shoigu. Hey, is it okay? Are you available on Tuesday, May 3rd but Wednesday, May 3rd, say 8 a.m. in the morning? Sure, guys, back. Yeah, I think I can do that. Okay, we'll be launching our offensive then. Thanks a lot. We'll be ready. Hey, and then they write an article. This is odd, but for some reason they don't have the element of surprise that we think they probably need for an offensive. Hey, why don't you just shoot them yourselves if you're going to do that? If you're going to just tell the Russians, just shoot them yourselves. Make it easy, for God's sake. So at any rate, NATO officials say that 98% of the fighting vehicles pledged to Ukraine are now in country. There we go. They got 98% of what they need. How about this? At the beginning of the war, I think they had 98% of what they need. And where's that 98% now? Hey, we gave them 98% of what they needed. In fact, my understanding was they had 100% of what they needed, and it's all gone. So now, apparently, that wasn't 100% of what they needed. And now you're going to give them 98% of what they need to drive right into a trap. What do they got? They got 30 miles of entrenched fortifications. What are you going to do? Right down into the teeth of that. How could that possibly go wrong? You imagine that? Hey, we got good news for you. Tomorrow is the offensive. What are we going to do? Okay, here's the plan. The Russians have 30 miles of pillboxes, machine gun nests, mortar positions, artillery squares, everything you could imagine to tear you to shreds. Okay. And we're going to tell them where you're going to attack and when you're going to attack. And the Ukrainian soldiers are like, hey, whose side do you want anyway? We're on your side. Okay. But it makes for good stories. Then, on the appropriate time that we've already advised the Russians, you are going to go right down the barrel of those fortifications. You're going to attack right in machine gun nests, mortar positions, artillery, all of that. You're going right down the middle of it, right down the alley. And you will be victorious. And Ukrainian soldiers are like, there's something about this plan. It seems like it's got a few holes in it. I'm just going to throw that out there. I think that plan has a few holes in it. Now, I kind of feel like here's the reality. This is a proxy war. Bad news, Ukrainians. This is kind of the way proxy wars work. You know, it's think of yourself like a goose, right? Think about the old songs. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. You're the goose. The offensive is Christmas morning and you're fat. When they came in and they said to you in 2014, hey, good news, guys, we've overthrown those weak-kneed, lily-livered wimps that ran your country, Russian lovers, and here we got you back. Oh, all right, what are you going to do? First of all, we're going to arm you to the teeth. Yeah. Then we're going to help you dig entrenchments all over Bakhmut and everywhere else. Yeah. Then we're going to anger the Russians. We're going to draw them in, and you're going to kill them. Yeah. And the Ukrainians are like, and you got our back, right? And they're like, well, we're still working on that part. But bottom line is, we gave you everything you need to destroy the Russians. And you'll wipe the Russian army out probably in months, weeks, days, maybe even. Okay, you're going to wipe the Russians. And they're like, yeah, great. Now, this is what it's devolved to Ukraine and military. This was always it. You were always a speed bump. You were always there to weaken the Russians. Think about that. Weaken the Russians. You were there to draw them in. You know, I go fishing, and sometimes I feel bad, but sometimes when you're fishing, you use a minnow. You take the poor little wiggly minnow and you put them on a hook and you throw them over. And it may be a bass, it may be a white perch, it may be a crappie. If you're freshwater fishing, it could be, you know, a striper if you're in the bay. I mean, there's all kinds of things, right? But that poor little minnow's job, well, we know what the minnow's job is, and it ain't a good one. Well, Ukraine, you're effectively a minnow. Your job is to draw in the predatory fish, which would be Russia, to draw in this fish. And when he tries to eat the minnow, then we snag him, right? So your job was to draw the Russian into Ukraine. And while they're killing you and blowing your country to hell and destroying everything, then that gives us the reason to go ahead. See, the plan was, we draw them in while they're beating the hell out of you. Then we can sanction them. Yay! And then as we're sanctioning them, they'll get weaker from the sanctions. And let's face it, if you're beating somebody, if you're punching them, boom, 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 your arms are going to get tired. So they'll beat the hell out of you. We'll sanction. Of course, you're going to get mangled, torn to shreds by artillery, but that's part of the game. Hey, you know, it's the way it is what it is. And while you're being mangled and torn to shreds by artillery and your country turned into a pile of rubble, right? Rubble, that's what you get. You're going to be rubble. And we're going to sanction them, and the neocon project will move, and we will weaken Russia, and blah, 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 blah. And as a bonus, we'll get to weaken Europe and wipe them out and get them off of Russian energy onto U.S. energy. We'll charge them 5-6 times the price of what the Russians are paying, and we'll completely wipe out the European economy, which is part of the plan, so that they can't get mouthy with us. They'll have to do what they're told because they'll be completely impoverished and dependent on us. And then Russia will take all of Russia's, break it up, regime change Russia, take all of their resources. And oh, by the way, your part in this Ukraine is you get to get torn to shreds by artillery and die and get your country wiped out. That's the plan. When you're a proxy, that's the way it works, Ukraine. That's your job. And you get to run around and say all kinds of stupid things because you know what they've done? Because they have weaponized your stupidity. They have weaponized your anger. They have weaponized your rage. They have reminded you, yeah, the Russians are evil. You hate them, don't you? Yeah, we hate the Russians. So do we. I'm glad you hate the Russians. They're terrible, aren't they? Yeah. Therefore, well, it probably ain't going to work out in your best interest. Don't you want to fight the Russians? Yeah, you're going to help us? Yeah, sure, whatever. Don't you want to fight the Russians? Yes. Okay, we got your back. We will set you up to fight the Russians. I know you hate those Russians, don't you? Yes, we hate them. And in fact, they deserve to be hated. Why? They're Ubermenschen. They're all kind of terrible things. They're not even human, right? Correct. And you want to destroy them, right? Absolutely. All right, we're going to help you. That's the setup. They say they're on your side. They get your rage built up. You're all ready to go into Russia. And they can then put you on the hook. And when Russia bites the bait, they can wipe Russia out and take all of their stuff. Now, it isn't quite working, but it doesn't matter to me anyway, because you were only bait. You know what happens? I throw a minnow on sometimes and I get hit. Whoa, got a hit. Ah, crap, he got off. I reel it up. There's half a minnow. Ah, crap, he bit the minnow in half. Off he goes, and we'll snag another minnow and throw it over. That's what minnows are for. It's their job. If a minnow was overboard and he was just living a regular minnow life, you know what would happen? You know what happens to minnows in a regular minnow life? A bigger fish comes in and eats them because they're smaller. And of course, if you're the fish that ate them, then oftentimes there's a bigger predatory fish that comes and eat you. Hey, that's the way the game plays. And if you're Ukraine, you're a minnow. And guess what? The neocons have played you. And now the final game they're playing is the Ukrainian offensive. Now, let's talk about that a little bit at least. The Ukraine offensive is interesting because the outcome is, to me, not in doubt, right? And where do the neocons go from there? What happens afterwards? Let's just say it happens. Right now, I don't even know if an offensive is happening. I think that it has to politically, that militarily, it's suicide for the Ukrainian military. It is absolute suicide. They are going to take unthinkable casualties. And they may get a little. Look, here's the thing about it. You may win something that's not going to do you any good. Let's say they take a town here and there. They take a couple of towns. The Russians are not fighting to hold on to towns. The Russians are doing that dance. They'll back up and let you have the town, then they'll come in and kill you and take the town back. And they just want the fight. Right? They'll back up and they'll say, come on and take the town. As you're taking the town, you lose 60% casualties. Then they come back, and when they take the town back, they get the other 40%. They just want the fight. They want to destroy your army. They don't want to hold on to property. It's kind of like when you're training for self-defense and you stand still, right? And at first, the person stands still, and eventually you learn, I'm not protecting this property. I need to move. I need to move left. I need to move right. If I can flee, if I can get away, if somebody's threatening me, the first thing is to flee, to get away, right? To leave the area, right? Think about the Russians, self-defense. I'm holding this town and the Ukrainians come in. It looks like I might take college casualties. Let me get out of the way. First thing, move. Ooh, no, yeah, go ahead and have it. It's yours. But I'm going to inflict some casualties while you're taking it. Now you're sitting in that town. I'm going to rain artillery on you while you're sitting in there, and you're going to take casualties while you're there. If you attack me, I'm standing here like this. You come at me. I don't have to stand here and fight. I can move over there this way. I can move over that way. I can run. I can walk. I can get behind you. I can move to the side. I see this big fist is ready on this side to punch me. You know, people, they hold one hand put out there, one. You know what they want to do. They want to jab, 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 and then they want to hit you with the haymaker, right? So I got this fist over here. I'm going to move to the left constantly. I'm going to move this way. I'm going to move away from that big punch. I'm not going to move in this direction right into the punch. I'm going to keep moving, and all you can do is lean, trying to come around and throw the big punch, right? I'm going to move. Bottom line is, if you get what I'm saying, tactically speaking, strategically, well, that would be tactically speaking, the Russians can give ground. Don't matter. They're just trying to win the fight in the long run. They can give it. So if you go in and say, we're going to take ground, what do the Russians care? It doesn't matter if you take ground or lose ground. They're trying to wipe out your army. And if in the course of losing and taking and losing and taking and losing and taking, eventually, so you got 100,000 men. You lose 20,000 of them taking the town. You sit in the town, you lose 20,000 more. You back out. You take the town again, you lose 20,000. You sit in the town, you lose 20,000 from artillery. At some point, you're out of it. That's all the Russians care, because at some point, you ain't going to have enough people to either take or lose the town. You're going to continue to attrit your people away. So this offensive, really, if they're trying to take ground, the Russians just want to keep fighting until you're out of people and machines. Bottom line, they want to keep fighting until you run out of stuff to fight with. What happens if I got some big guy that's trying to fight me, and I can keep fighting until he collapses? This guy's twice my size. You know, he's 6'5", he's 280 pounds. 380 pounds, whatever. And I know if he gets his mitts on me, what if I can punch him? I can stick and move. I can get out of the way. I can get him sweating. I can keep him from stay far enough away that he can't hit me, that he can't grab me, that he can't do anything. And at some point, I fight him so long, he sweats and he collapses of a heart attack and dies. I won, right? I won attrition. I stayed there. I could fight longer than he could. Okay. And the Russians are like, we believe we can fight longer than you. You can't keep coming up with ammo. You're running short of ammo. Back in the back at your your home base of the patron in the US and in the EU, politically speaking, the people, your political support is getting weaker. Everything's on our behalf. Let's drag this thing out. So this counteroffensive now, whatever the hell it is, if they attack, the Russians win when you attack because they're set, man. They are set. Or best case scenario, if you attack a city militarily, you need 3 to 1. If the attackers have 100,000, you need 300,000. Well, here's the thing. It appears to me that the Ukrainians are planning to attack with less than the defender. You need 3 to 1, and you're attacking with less than the defender. Now, there's a huge, and might I add this, the Russians have space-based intelligence assets, so you can't even sneak up on them. Wherever you're planning on to attack, they've got satellites. They can see you gathering, and they're like, okay, they're gathering people. I suspect that of the missile strikes the past few days, that the Russians have been doing massive missile strikes. And I believe a big part of that is figuring out where your ammo is, figuring out where your stuff is coming, figuring out how you're setting yourself up for this offensive and thwarting it, attacking the things that you need for this offensive to further weaken the offensive. I would suspect, based on the intelligence that they have in Ukraine, that they're able to hit some of your fuel depots, some of your places where you muster men, some of the places where you muster your military hardware. So before the offensive starts, the Russians have the ability to hit it with standoff weapons such as missiles, aircraft, etc. So your counteroffensive is going to be weakened before it even starts. Then you're running right the hell straight on into a trap. And you're fighting people who don't care if they give up ground. So even if you start having a little bit of luck in one area, they're just going to back off and give you that area. Then what do they care? And then they're going to come back and hit you, or they're going to let you take that area, set up, and hit you with artillery and bomb you. They got time on their hands. That's all I'm saying. The Russians got time on their hands. Doesn't look like a good plan right now for the counteroffensive. And let me add this about the counteroffensive. When it's over, what then? What then? You've expended your military. You've taken devastating losses. Maybe you got a town or two, maybe not. Maybe you've had some luck, whatever. The Russians, you know what the Russians are going to say? All right, time to keep fighting, because that's what they're there for. The Russians ain't going nowhere. So they're like, here to keep fighting. And you have expended, you have thrown it all in a big punch. That's like the guy that puts everything, and he screams and he throws this big punch. And if it misses, he ain't got energy for another one. Well, what happens if he lands, he hits the guy, wham, with everything he's got. And he lands as the punch of all punches, bam. And the guy backs up and shakes his head and smiles at him. Says, is that all you got? Comes back at him. You're in trouble then, because you hit him with everything you have. And the only thing he did was shook it off, smiled at you and said, is that the best you can do? Come on, let's dance. You already know that you've lost that fight, right? So the Ukrainians now effectively are going to say, let's hit them with everything we got. What happens if you hit them with everything you got and they back up and they shake their head and they smile a little bit and they spit hello blood on their lip? They say, that's all. That's the best you can do? That's the best you can do, buddy? Let's dance. And I suspect at the end of this offensive, so now here's the next thing. So at the end of this offensive, at that point, now here's what we're hearing. This is really stupid. When the offensive is over, we'll negotiate. And you assume that the Russians are going to be in a negotiating mood, right? That's like saying, all right, I will attack Garland if he kicks my ass, if he throws me on the ground, if he stomps me, he elbows me in the face, he knees me in the groin, he grabs my wrist and breaks that, he breaks some of my fingers, pokes me in the eye, knocks out my teeth, breaks my jaw, I'm laying on the ground bleeding, spittle running out of my mouth, a glass is turned sideways. At that point, I'm going to say to Garland, time to negotiate. What is Garland going to negotiate for? He's winning the fight. It ain't time for negotiate. It's time for an unconditional surrender at that point. And Garland says, hey, Garland, I think it's time we negotiate. And I say, nah, I think I'll keep stomping on your head. You're down. You're laying there. You're mumbling. You are defeated. This absurd idea that they're going to launch this offensive, and if it works, they'll negotiate. If it doesn't work, they'll negotiate. Like the Russians are just going to cooperate. Like they're just going to call the Russians, hey, Russians, yeah, man, didn't work out so well with that offensive, huh? The Russians are like, yeah, we kind of saw that coming. What do you need? Hey, we're wondering about negotiating now. Possibly you could give back all of Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, Donbass and all that stuff. Give up Crimea, and then we'll completely and totally arm Ukraine. We'll make it a part of NATO. What the hell's that sound? Hello? Hello? Russians? Hello? They ain't answering. They ain't talking to you. They're hanging up on you. They have no reason. The fact of the matter is this. They're going to be even less likely to negotiate. Why would you negotiate when you're winning? You've given us everything you got and we smacked it down. Now, what are the Ukrainians going to do? By the by, what are they going to do now when, again, and I've said this for a while, at some point, generations of Ukrainian are going to, they're going to, basically, we're throwing another 30, 40,000 of Ukrainians. They're throwing another generation of Ukrainians. That's what they're doing. This offensive is just another generation of Ukrainians to be thrown to the dogs, to be thrown to the swamp, to be buried. So now it's like, what are you going to do? We're going to bury another 40,000 Ukrainians. Then after that, we're going to negotiate with the Russians. Well, why don't you negotiate with the Russians beforehand? Why don't you just say, hey, let's negotiate? Because negotiating with the Russians is going to mean giving them what the hell they want. They've already told you what they want. In 2022 of December, the Russians in writing gave the United States a list of their priorities, of their security needs that they wanted to talk about. And the U.S. said that ain't even a starter. So you know what the Russians are going to say? They said, that's not even a starter. You guys are saying we have to, get off of your border and stop surrounding you with bases and menacing you and threatening you. No way. So when the U.S., in the event that the U.S. or NATO goes to Russia and says, let's negotiate, Russia's going to say that ain't even a starter. No, negotiate. We already negotiated. You got a list of what we want. We gave you that list in December of 2022. Look over the list. While you're reading the list, we'll finish pulverizing Ukraine. And we're going to get, bottom line is, I'll never forget this. There was a phone call between Vladimir Putin and Emmanuel Macron. And Macron talked to Putin, and Putin said, we will achieve our goals either through diplomacy or force of arms. That's the bottom line. So the Russians have goals. They've set goals for the special military operation, and they're going to achieve them. And if the U.S. wants to come in and fight, they're probably going to have to fight Russia and China. If they want to fight Russia, they're in all likelihood, they're going to have to fight Russia and China. There is no way that China is going to sit back and let NATO attack Russia and just go toe to toe with Russia, the U.S. and NATO. And China's not going to, at that point, you would see them surround Taiwan immediately and say, we're going to take Taiwan. It would be a two-front. Russia, they wouldn't have to jump in per se. If NATO and the U.S. said we're going to, which they don't have the wherewithal to do it. Not with troops and stuff like that. If they launch some missiles from ships or from their bases against Russia, Russia would retaliate with massive swarms of missiles and things of that nature. That wouldn't be something we'd want to see because it could go nuclear in a hurry. But I suspect if the United States would, at this point, realize we've lost, so we're going at it with Russia, that immediately the Chinese would surround Taiwan and maybe give them 12 hours, 10 hours, 1 hour, whatever, blockade Taiwan and say to the United States, okay, well, if you're going to fight Russia, you got to fight. We're taking Taiwan now. And anybody you want to dance over here to, they basically say to the U.S., if you're going to fight Russia, we're taking Taiwan. So you're going to fight Russia and defend Taiwan at the same time? You think you want a piece of that action? So I suspect that the deterrence factor is going to be high for the United States going after Russia. And at any rate, let's face it, Europe is dry. Europe is demilitarized. The countries in Europe are basically saying, we don't have anything left. We're running out of ammo. We're running out of everything. So in reality, at the end of this offensive, how can the U.S. come in? They've sucked all of their allies dry of everything. So really, they don't have the military wherewithal at the end of this. So they're going to be stumped. And might I add, here's the problems the neocons have. The Blinkens, the Bidens, the Newlands, they're all in. So at this point, when this offensive fails, you know good and damn well there's going to be people in the EU, in Europe saying, hey, man, we this ain't working. We've done everything. What now? Let's find a way the hell out of this. You know there's going to be people screaming, we got to get out of this. So you're going to see an internal fight, an internal battle going on in NATO. It's clear that the Europeans, there's an element in Europe that has clearly recognized that the US desires, that the neocon project in Europe does not align with their security needs, and in fact involves sacrificing them in the same way that they sacrificed Ukraine for the neocon project. So I think that at the end of this offensive, you're going to see a little bit of the battle between the neocons and between those who aren't completely on board with the neocon project. You're going to see that battle start to increase. If in fact they just flat out launch a counteroffensive against the Russians, I think that the level of devastation, the level of death and destruction that the Ukrainians face will be a problem. It'll be a problem in Ukraine. It'll be a problem in Europe to get the Ukrainians to keep this fight. And I also suspect, now I'll tell you what I suspect is possible. I'll tell you what I would do. It's possible that the Russians are sitting there saying, come on into this trap. And that you're most vulnerable when in a fight, when you are aggressive, when you assertive, when you punch, when you kick, when you throw blows, that's when you are the most vulnerable, because if they miss, then somebody can get you. And if you throw your punch, your arm is out there. If you throw a strike, your arm is out there, right? At that point. And that's why whenever you're boom, you got to get it back. You know, you'll notice anybody punching, boom, boom, it's back. It's a punch back, boom, back, boom, back. Get it back quick. Why is that? Because if you get that hand out there and somebody gets it and they twist it back, you're in trouble. So boom, you got to get it back, right? So when you throw that offensive, that's out there. You put all of these soldiers out there in the middle to get wiped out, to get destroyed, equipment, everything's out there. So what happens if you do that and the Russians let you get all of this and just crush it and say, now let's see what's behind it, and they launch their counteroffensive and they close in on you. And so now your offensive is stopped, and what's behind that? How much defense do you have behind that? They come from behind their defenses and they launch a counterattack, maybe a pincer movement, whatever the case may be, but you're now exposed. You've thrown that punch and it didn't hurt them, and they got it, and then they twist it backwards. Ooh, you're going down. You ain't winning that one. You're in deep trouble. You better act in a hurry. And in a hurry means to get out of that. If somebody gets you and starts going, you got to get out of that in a hurry. Right. So the bottom line is that's the counteroffensive is from the perspective of a fight. Not only is it a political move, in that they're doing it because they've said they're going to do it, and they're afraid that if they don't do it, that they're going to get heat for not doing it. Additionally, it's a very dangerous move, because if it fails, you set yourself up for a counterattack, of devastating counterattack. And if you've put all of your power into going forward and attacking, the behind the lines, the defensive ain't going to be that strong. So what happens if they swat that down? And now whatever soldiers you have might be on the retreat. Now they're running and they're chasing you. And you're running like shooting backwards, bow, bow, running. You're trying to get the hell out of there at some point. Either you run or you get blown to hell. So this is a big risk, and I think that the Russians may counterattack, and it could end this war. Number one, it could end the war. It's like I said, if you throw a punch and you don't get that back, and somebody grabs it, they can end the fight. Pow! They can snap your wrist right there. They can get some fingers. Pow! They can go sideways with those fingers and snap those fingers. Your hand comes out like that. They pin that arm against you. Look at that face sitting there. You know, your arm comes out and you don't get it back, and they're able to get on this side of your arm or your elbow, and they're able to pin that over here like this. They're able to pin your arm back here quickly. Woo, they pin it. Pow. that fist comes right in your freaking nose. All kinds of terrible things happen, right? So when you get that, when you're assertive and you attack that offensive attack, the situation can go really, really bad for you. And I suspect that could end the war. We could be looking at, if they attack, we could be looking at the end of it. Additionally, if I were the Russians, I can't say that I would. Let me say this strategically, since we're getting towards the end of this. Strategically speaking, I've always said this. If I were the Russians, I ain't in no rush. Russians shouldn't rush. How about that? I'm never in a rush. Time is on my side. If I'm with the Chinese, time is on my side. I'm watching you guys fall apart. I'm going to give you time to fall apart. If I was the Russians and this is your offensive, I might knock that offensive down and just devastating, absolutely, all the casualties I could possibly call. And then as you retreat, I'm going to attack you. I'm going to bomb you. When you're retreating, I'm going to let you have it. And I'm going to continue to attack your lines mercilessly day and night with artillery, with everything that I can. I'm going to hit you and you're going to, but I'm not going to overrun you. Why? And this is going to sound, I guess, it's strategic. I'm just going to say this. Because you're losing. And this is not just about Ukraine. This is about their patrons. So now I'm going to knock you down, and you got this thing called Ukraine that you're tied onto. What are you going to do next? If I just knock it down, it's over, and we go from there. And then you got to make a decision. Are you going to come in? What are you going to do? But if I keep it going, I'm just bleeding you. You know what I say? Hey, guys, good idea. You sent a lot of Challenger tanks, Leopard tanks, Cheetah tanks, House Cat, Tomcat, Alley Cat, every kind of tank you could send, and they're blown to hell. We're out of tanks. Send some more. Now, at this point, the U.S. now is in a bind. If I let it continue, the U.S. now has to go to their partners. Hey, guys, what? We got to send more tanks. And they're going to be like, yeah, but those are the last tanks we had. Well, you got to build some more and send them because we got to have a fall offensive. I mean, we had a spring offensive. We got to get ready for the fall offensive. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are going to be like, we're just about out of people. They're going to be like, you got women, don't you? Yeah. Old people, maybe people in wheelchairs. Yeah. That's next. This is going to be the an offensive of people who, we're going to give an opportunity for people to defend their countries that don't normally have the opportunity, like old women and men and people who are maybe handicapped, wheelchairs, aluminum walkers, things of that nature. We're sending them next down the front line. As long as you got Ukrainians, you got people to die, we got people to attack the Russians. So if I'm the Russians, I may swat this down. To be frank, I'd swat this down if I could, but I wouldn't try to end the war. Because it's going in my favor. It's working for me, and I'm going to keep it. And the word is collapse. If you let this thing go on long enough, all of it's going to collapse. Ukraine at some point will collapse. I want to defeat Ukraine. I don't want to be defeating Ukraine. I want Ukraine to collapse. Once Ukraine collapses, then it's got to look somewhere for help. The people in Ukraine. See, think about this. And this is, and I'll end on this note. At some point, this war is going to be over. And there's going to be something there left of Ukraine. And it's going to be expensive, real expensive. Why is that? Because the Russians took all the good stuff. They're going to have the part where they grow the wheat. They're going to have the part where there's mines. They're going to have the part where there's all this good stuff. They're going to have the coasts where the ports are. They're going to have all the stuff that you need to make money will be absorbed into the Russian Federation. And the area where there's a bunch of stinking Nazis running around west of the river, all the way up to the Poland border, yeah, you can have that part. Ain't a whole lot of industry, not a whole lot of money to be made. And you know what? You got to feed those people. It's yours. You got to take care of those people. Why? They got pensions. They got all kinds of things. So you know what? Take them, EU. Put them in the EU. So what? You got a welfare state. You can have it. The Russians are going to say, and you know what we got? We got industry. We got mines. We got seaports. We got all the good stuff. And you can have the damn Nazis. You can have that part. Keep it. Yeah, give it to Poland, whatever the hell. That's eventually where we end up. And at some point, I suspect the EU is going to look at the US and say, hey, this is kind of expensive. You left us with a very, very expensive venture here. What are we to do with this? And the U.S. is going to say, no time to talk about that. Right now, we're raising prices on the LNG you're buying, and we'll be over here talking to the Chinese about Taiwan. You EU gets screwed. So if I'm the Russians, to be quite frank, I ain't in a rush. I'm not in a rush to end it. In fact, if I'm the Russians, I don't want to end it by my actions. I want it to collapse. I want it to fall apart of its own accord. I want to keep the pressure on. Just keep pressure until everything behind it falls apart. If the Russians keep pressure on the US, if the longer they keep pressure on, the greater the probability becomes that the US and the EU have problems. That because the longer it goes on, the more it becomes apparent that the security needs of the EU do not align with the US neocons, and that the US neocons are using the EU, just using them as economic cannon fodder. And might I add, the EU's waking up to say, we don't want any parts of this China crap, which makes it more and more difficult. So at any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. Let me look. There may be some super chats. Thanks for the informative analysis. Thank you, OCAX. Let's keep going. Are there some more super chats? Blinken's excuse as an uncoordinated excuse is as uncoordinated and unplanned as the entire Ukraine debacle. Yeah. When you put a neocon in a jam, neocons are idiots. They don't know what to do. They're stupid. Like I said, Blinken he's evil and stupid. All right, let's look at Rockfin. Nothing over there. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. And I want to thank a lot of people. Yesterday was my birthday, and a lot of people did super chats. A lot of people did buymeacoffee.com and said happy birthday. So I want to thank everybody that did that. As I said, it's all going into the account for this so-called studio. Such as it is. It's a bedroom. It's been converted into my office, and hopefully we move forward with the studio. No, hopefully it's going to become a studio. Okay, so it's definitely, I'm working on that, and hopefully before the end of the summer, that's my plan, maybe even sooner. All right, let's move forward. I'm on the way out. I want to thank all 1,262 of you and make sure that I have 1,262 likes here. Additionally, please share this on all of your social media platforms. Don't forget patreon.com. A lot of people use that. A lot of people are doing buymeacoffee.com now, because Buy Me a Coffee, you can do just like Patreon. You can do the, $5, $10, $12 a month, whatever. And a lot of people see Patreon as a neoliberal scum place. So they do buymeacoffee.com. So I really appreciate that. It's getting very popular. PayPal, of course. And I do my Cash App. That information is there for anybody who can donate to help build the old studio. Rockfin.com is very important. ROKFIN.com. That's a free speech platform. Does not have any advertisements. It's great. Make sure you become a member over there. It doesn't cost anything to become a member. You can become certainly sponsor the channel. You can become a subscriber on Rockfin for $14.99 a month. If you sign up for a year, then it becomes like $12.40 a month or something like that. If you can afford to sponsor the channel, that'll be a big help. I certainly appreciate that on Rockfin. Become a subscriber, but you don't have to. You don't have to become a subscriber. You can go over there for free. And if they ever kick me off YouTube, since that's a free speech platform, we're good. You don't have to worry. You can watch everything that I do over there. Last but not least, tomorrow morning, Scott Ritter, as you probably may already know, is in Russia doing his fine works for the entire month of May. I'm going to have guests tomorrow morning. Gerald Salente, great guy. He's funny. He's brilliant. He's cool. I'm going to have him at 9 a.m. So make sure you're there. And, normally what I do is I do my subscriber only show Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. for the month of May. I'm not going to do that. Everybody's going to be able to watch it. So I'm going to have various guests. Gerald Salente, Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks a lot, you all. Peace. I'm out.